Hey, so you think storms only happen in movies or on the nightly news? Nope. Mother Nature is basically like, pay attention or I'll blow you away. I'm talking about megastorms, typhoons, tornadoes, the kind of wild weather that can wipe out entire neighborhoods, beaches, and even oceanside towns. And trust me, we're not dealing with some light breeze here. We're talking giant cloud monsters and ruthless wind speeds that can tear through anything in their path. Take typhoons, for example. The moment wind speeds crank up to around 125 miles per hour, you can pretty much say, hello, disaster. Typhoons thrive on warm, humid air, which just powers them up even more. You'll usually spot them along Asian coastlines in the Pacific, and they don't stop at wind. They bring along huge waves and flooding, too. Tornadoes, on the other hand, are like the surprise house guest nobody invited. One minute, the sky's normal. The next, there's a funnel cloud swirling around trying to vacuum up everything in sight. When that spinning column of air hits about 180 miles per hour, say goodbye to rooftops and hello to flying cars. It's like a giant blender dropped down from the clouds. Cities can be left in ruins in a matter of minutes. Sound a bit freaky? Maybe it should. But don't worry. The point here isn't to give you nightmares, it's to show how insanely powerful nature can be, so we can all be a little smarter about it. Whether you're the type who lives for an adrenaline rush or the type who's like, nope, I'll stay indoors, thanks, there's a ton to learn. So kick back, get comfortable, and get ready to see massive gusts, flying debris, and maybe wonder, could this wind actually toss me across the street? Buckle up. This is only the beginning. All right, let's jump into the heart of things. Typhoons. Ever seen one up close? It's like Mother Nature decided to crank everything to max and see what happens. So how do these giant storms form in the first place? Picture a massive pot of water on your stove, except the pot is the tropical ocean, and the steam is warm, humid air rising skyward. That air hits cooler layers up above, forming thunderstorms that spin around like a blender on overdrive. If the wind speeds keep climbing, say 74 miles per hour and up, you've got yourself a typhoon. And trust me, once it levels up into a full-blown typhoon, it's not just windy, it's rooftops taking flight windy. Ever been caught in the middle of a typhoon? If you have, you know it's both terrifying and strangely awe-inspiring. One minute, the beach looks normal. The next, giant waves are crashing onto highways and turning entire streets into rivers. You've got storm surges to worry about. Basically, the sea deciding to waltz into your neighborhood uninvited, plus the floodwaters that can float cars and, yes, sometimes entire roofs downstream. The craziest part? Typhoons don't show mercy. They'll tear into coastal towns, yank off rooftops, and fling cars around like they're toy models. The aftermath often looks like a war zone, flooded streets, crumbled bridges, and that sinking feeling of, did that used to be a house? But hey, that's why we're talking about it, so we can see what these storms can do and maybe learn a thing or two. Now let's keep rolling, because up next, we'll check out how these monstrous winds team up with torrential rains and give us those jaw-dropping, car-floating scenes you'll see in the footage. Grab your raincoat. We often see how strong winds drag cars, lorries, and even giant ships out of the way. But have you seen how they destroy bridges? The catastrophic events that have increased in recent years are explained by scientists as the consequences of climate change. But you know scientists. They can change their thesis, which they defend today with certainty. Tomorrow they can change it and say, my God, the cause is not climate change. The recent increasing and unnatural events continue to make people skeptical, just like the conspiracy theories put forward in the California fires. In essence, tornadoes are formed when warm, moist air near the ground meets cooler, drier air above. Add something called a wind shear, where wind speed and direction change at different altitudes, and you have a recipe for spinning. Imagine a horizontally rotating air rolling pin. When the updraft of a strong storm turns this spinning air vertical, you have the beginnings of a tornado funnel. And if this funnel makes contact with the ground, congratulations, you have a full-blown tornado. These spinning columns of wind can reach speeds of over 200 miles per hour, blowing off the roofs of buildings and blowing cars like paper. The enhanced Fujita EF scale rates tornadoes from EF0 to EF5. An EF0 will only cause minor tree damage and blow away some debris, but an EF5 will destroy an entire neighborhood. Most tornadoes last only a few minutes, but even that is enough time to leave a path of destruction that looks like something out of a disaster film. In rare cases, they can stay on the ground for hours and leave a path that you can then trace on a map. The wild thing is how unpredictable they can be. Sometimes radar and storm trackers provide enough warning to get people to safety. Other times, a seemingly harmless storm can produce a funnel cloud in minutes. This is one of the things that makes tornadoes so fascinating and a little frightening. So when you watch images of roofs blown off or entire barns destroyed, remember this. It all starts with the basic weather components, a pinch of wind shears, and the nudge of a thunderstorm to bring the air rolling pin into an upright position. Nature has a flair for the dramatic, and tornadoes are a perfect testament to that. Let's analyze lightning, the flamboyant helper of violent thunderstorms. In the simplest terms, lightning occurs when electrical charges build up inside thunderclouds. The ups and downs of a storm cloud cause ice, hail, and water droplets to collide, creating static electricity. Eventually, the charge difference between the cloud and the ground becomes so great that the electricity begins to flash through the air as lightning. Why is it so dangerous? Lightning carries an incredibly high voltage, enough to heat the surrounding air to about 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit in 1 second. If you can believe it, that's hotter than the surface of the sun. When this superheated air expands rapidly, you get the thunderous explosion we all know and perhaps don't like so much at 2 a.m. A direct lightning strike can cause severe burns, heart failure, and of course, fires on impact. And not just people. Trees, power lines, and buildings can also be vulnerable. How do you stay safe? The simplest rule, go indoors when it thunders. If you are outside, avoid wide open spaces or the tallest object in the vicinity, such as standing under a lone tree. Try not to use wired electronics indoors. Yes, lightning can pass through wires and give you a not-so-fun jolt. And if you're on the road, it's safer to stay in your car than to run outside with an umbrella like you're in a romantic comedy scene. The next time you see a flickering lightning bolt in the sky, remember that there is an electric dance going on there. It's mesmerizing to watch, but respect the power it has, because a stray bolt of lightning can really ruin your day. Don't you think she looks marvelous? Storms start with strong winds caused by the rise of warm air and the descent of cold air. Sometimes the cold air is a little too cold and sudden freezing can occur. This is a very rare phenomenon. When it happens, it negatively affects life but leaves wonderful views. Of course, when we get cold, we don't care much about the view. So let's enjoy it comfortably now. Ever been walking downtown and suddenly found your ankles underwater? That's what happens when torrential rains outpace a city's drainage system. Storm drains, sewers, none of them can keep up with the deluge, and voila, you've got flash floods filling streets and even subway stations. It's not just about a little extra water either. High-speed floodwaters can knock out power, damage roads, and turn commuting into a full-blown obstacle course. And if you think an underground train station is safe, think again. Water doesn't care where it flows. It'll spill down stairs, escalate over tracks, and basically turn your daily commute into a scene straight out of a disaster flick. Bottom line, cities can plan all they want, but when Mother Nature decides it's time to let loose, even the best laid infrastructure can find itself underwater, literally. Now, picture all that rainfall hitting open land or hilly terrain. Sure, it sounds a bit calmer than a flooded metro station, but don't be fooled. When water collects on slopes or loose soil, it can trigger landslides that'll wipe out entire hillsides, roads, and anything else in their path. Add in debris like rocks and tree branches, and you've got a muddy avalanche barreling through the countryside. In flatter areas, prolonged flooding can soak into the ground until it's basically quicksand, weakening foundations and uprooting trees. Whether it's roaring mudslides or standing water that turns farmland into a lake, the forces unleashed when rain meets soil can be just as devastating as any city flood. All it takes is one heavy downpour for Mother Nature to remind us who's really in charge. You know, over the past few years, we've really come to understand one thing. Going head-to-head with Mother Nature ends up a disaster for us all. It doesn't matter how advanced our technology gets. There's just no outsmarting her. If we want to protect ourselves and every living thing, we've got to learn how to live in harmony with the Earth. It's almost ironic. Native Americans have been telling us this for centuries, but we're only now realizing what they meant. It's a sign that maybe we misunderstood civilization and virtue all along. Eventually, we'll find our way because walking alongside nature, not against it, is the only path that truly makes sense. Heavy rains and storms often result in floods in the countryside. In this video, we will see how the soils softened by the rains mix with the floodwaters and bring destruction. While preparing the video, I chose videos without injuries and deaths so that sensitive people can watch it. Although the destroyed houses, bridges, roads, and floating cars are sad, it was a consolation for us that there were no deaths and injuries. You can watch it comfortably. Have a good time. Rain, hail, and typhoons have unavoidable effects, especially in areas where the soil is soft and loose and on fertile soil. Many parts of Asia are examples. No matter how many precautions are taken, it is impossible to resist Mother Nature. The worst thing is that floods and landslides happen unannounced. It has happened to many of us. An ordinary rainy day suddenly turns into a life and death struggle. We may think we are safe in our cars or even in our homes, and then suddenly a raging flood wave comes, or we may be driving down the road and suddenly tons of earth and rocks start coming towards us. What can we do? Can we drive away quickly? Can we get to high ground and escape? If we are lucky and recognize the impending disaster early on, yes, it can work. But more often than not, Mother Nature prevails. When the floodwaters loosened the floor of this building and it began to lean forward, the inhabitants managed to get away in time. But it was impossible to prevent the building from collapsing. This car also survived the rocks falling on the road in seconds. Although a mini tsunami formed by the soil falling into the lake spoiled the joy of the young people, they managed to survive with wet shoes. The people living in this house were not so lucky. They had to leave quickly, and the road was destroyed before they could get the car out of the garage, but everyone is safe and sound. This group of people collecting roots in the rain realized early on that they were in danger, and they narrowly escaped at the last moment, but their faces show how scared they were. The flood, combined with the mud, is so powerful that even concrete and steel can't withstand it. These bridges that collapsed are the biggest examples of this. The bridge you've been using for years suddenly disappears. It's a good thing that this gas station didn't explode, but they sure worked hard to stop the leak. This group finds it fun to watch rocks fall, and their fun turns into a marathon race when bigger rocks fall. For some reason, people like to watch things fall and collapse. And I'll admit I like it too. I bet you do too. What would you do if a flash flood came through the window of your house? Unfortunately, this neighborhood was completely destroyed. Thankfully, everyone was saved because the professionals arrived quickly and the evacuation was on time. This guy is really lucky. I mean, how lucky can you get when your house floods? The wall can't handle the water pressure and it collapses. But the man escaped at the last moment. After watching so many videos, I realized that Asian and African countries experience these disasters very often. I wonder if the problem is just the geographical structure of the regions where they live, or if it's a lack of infrastructure. Isn't it amazing that no one was hurt despite the destruction in the middle of so many crowds? It's almost like they're used to this situation. Isn't it a miracle that these guys got out of there? I think they used their superpowers to escape. After the road here collapsed, it turned out that the rest of the road and the bottom of the buildings were also empty because of the groundwater, and everyone was evacuated from their homes without waiting for the buildings to collapse. By the time these officials realized that they had parked their car in the wrong place, it was too late to save the car. They had to run away. The floodwaters that mix with the river drag the freighters away. The bridge in front of them does not collapse but causes great damage. For some reason, some houses collapse and some float. Does anyone know why? This bridge luckily doesn't collapse, but the people on it are heartbroken. But this bridge doesn't hold up as well. I like red bridges, or I should say, I used to. Have you ever seen such a big hailstorm? What looks like an avalanche is actually a landslide under the ice. It's just as dangerous as an avalanche, if not more so. This man realizes something's wrong while rock climbing. Fortunately, he's in the safest place on the property. And another house that collapses. It's as if it's slowly being sucked into the water. The earth beneath it is slowly shifting. One side of this high-tension line tower sinks into the mud and slowly bends and crushes under its own weight. Destruction is inevitable. The only way for these people to get home is through this street. They have to wait until the flood is over. This is what happens when flood water and seawater mix. A giant rock falls on the road as if the mountain has moved. Fortunately, it's slow enough for people to escape. One morning you wake up and see a hole in the ground where your garden pond used to be. It must be frustrating. Another group of people who can't get home, but they seem to be enjoying themselves. Have you ever seen a dancing bridge? I guess with a little wood and some rope, they can do better than concrete bridges. This abandoned house is doomed to rot and collapse from neglect. This man sees the falling stones at the last moment and takes shelter under the tunnel, but it's not safe enough there either. Fortunately, he survives. Landslides of this size are very dangerous and very scary. You don't want to be near them. Huge boulders and earth weighing thousands of tons. It looks as if huge mountains are disappearing in an instant. A bus parked in the wrong place, and of course the result is the same again. How much rain do you need for boating on the streets? I hope everyone is well. Volcanoes are natural formations that have fascinated humans since ancient times. In most myths and legends, they are associated with the anger of the gods, because they are so big and powerful that they are associated with the gods. Let's watch these unstoppable giant mountains of fire together. Volcanoes are geological structures formed when magma beneath the Earth's crust rises to the surface. Volcanic eruptions are often directly linked to tectonic plate movements. The areas where volcanoes are located are mostly subduction zones, oceanic ridges or hotspots. The molten rocks seeping through the cracks in the Earth's crust under great pressure and coming to the surface of the Earth sometimes flow slowly and sometimes erupt in large explosions. Magma is molten rock found deep underground. Magma is formed by the rise in temperature, the decrease in pressure, or the presence of volatile substances such as water. In subduction zones, when the oceanic plate plunges into the mantle, it takes water with it. This water lowers the melting point of the rocks in the mantle, leading to the formation of magma. The pressure created by the trapped water vapor and gases eventually breaks the Earth's crust and rises to the surface. The amount of trapped gas determines the size of the eruption. Earthquakes are natural phenomena caused by the sudden release of energy accumulation in the Earth's crust. The Earth's crust consists of a layer known as the lithosphere, which is divided into large tectonic plates. These plates are in constant motion thanks to magma flows in the underlying mantle layer. But this movement is not continuous and smooth. The boundaries between the plates undergo one of three main types of movement. Divergent boundaries. Plates move away from each other, usually along mid-ocean ridges. In these regions, magma rises to the surface and forms a new ocean floor. Convergent boundaries. Plates approach each other. One plate dives beneath the other. This is known as a subduction zone and often causes severe earthquakes and volcanoes. Transform boundaries. Plates move parallel to each other, leading to large stresses. The San Andreas Fault is an example. Earthquakes often occur along fault lines. Faults are fractures in the Earth's crust. When the energy in the fault lines reaches a level that cannot withstand environmental stresses, a slip occurs and this energy is released. Seismic waves carry this energy and cause the earthquake to be felt at the surface. The magnitude of an earthquake refers to the amount of energy released and is usually measured on the Richter scale. However, the effects of an earthquake depend on many factors such as its proximity to the surface, the soil structure, and the durability of structures. Landslides are a common occurrence in volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. They often happen so fast that it is almost impossible to escape. Some are lucky enough to escape at the last moment, like this driver who was saved by a tunnel that slowed the falling earth and rocks. But this building didn't escape anywhere. The huge falling rocks went through the building and rolled for 400 meters, leaving a huge debris and trail. It was lucky that the building was empty. The fear of earthquakes is a fear so great that it enters people's nightmares and affects their lives. When you think you are the safest, suddenly everything starts to shake. However difficult it may be at the time of an earthquake, going to the nearest open area and waiting there is the safest way of protection. But if you are inside a building and there is no time to go outside, it is an important way of protection to get under a table or take shelter next to an object that you know is strong and wait for the earthquake to pass. The earthquake is sometimes very strong, especially in places with soft ground, like the harbor. The crane of this harbor, which was built on the sea with fill soil, could not withstand the ground freezing and collapsed. The workers managed to escape by running to open areas. Unfortunately, people fleeing to save themselves and their loved ones during earthquakes can sometimes cause stampedes and injuries. In countries where earthquakes happen a lot, people are more conscious and careful. Drivers stopping their vehicles during an earthquake can prevent injuries to people fleeing. Some people are more cold-blooded than others and can guide society and create order. This reduces panic and people wait for the earthquake to pass in a safer way. Of course, if the building collapses, most precautions don't matter, but it is important to hide in a sheltered place to avoid injuries. I live in an area where earthquakes are very frequent, and it has happened to me many times. There are times when I live in an open area for days, waiting for the aftershocks to end and wondering if my house will remain strong enough to live in. What is interesting to me is that people who normally don't help each other support each other in such times and try to create order and help each other. I think the effort to create an order in chaos is in the genes of people. Could it be that our subconscious works with the logic that if there is no chaos, there is no need for help? Earthquakes shake not only the Earth's crust, but also people's souls. In offices, homes, or outdoors, this sudden natural phenomenon can turn our lives upside down in an instant. That's why the momentary effects of earthquakes, combined with the reactions of people, speak volumes. You see, these security cameras show us what happens during an earthquake. People are hiding in fear under tables, leaning against walls, or trying to find the nearest exit. But these images reveal not only panic, but also our instincts, because humans are driven by the instinct to survive in times of danger. If you are caught in an earthquake in such enclosed spaces, especially in large buildings such as offices, it is very important to stay away from the windows and find a place to protect your head. Basic reflexes, such as hiding under desks and covering your head with your hands, can increase your chances of survival. But this is only a short-term solution. In larger earthquakes, the structural strength of the building trumps everything else. This is why we need to be conscious both individually and socially. Potholes are usually formed when rocks that are easily soluble in water, such as limestone, dissolve over time. This natural process is often triggered by changes in surface gravity or groundwater levels. Human influence on the formation of sinkholes cannot be underestimated. For example, intensive agriculture or uncontrolled use of groundwater can accelerate such ground collapses. Ground movements such as earthquakes can trigger disasters in these already vulnerable regions. This is why ground surveys during construction can be life-saving. The impact of earthquakes is not limited to buildings. The ground structure is also a big factor. On the screen now, you can see how a museum was damaged by the collapse of the ground. The Corvette Museum was hit hard in 2014 when a sinkhole suddenly appeared. The ground suddenly collapsed and very valuable vehicles sank to the ground. It was a reminder of how dynamic and unpredictable the Earth's crust is. Imagine a tremendous pressure and energy building up deep in the earth. This energy, which has been waiting silently for millions of years, suddenly finds a way and explodes. This is where the story of volcanoes begins. These eruptions are one of the most spectacular displays of the nature of our world. They are so powerful that sometimes they blow off the top of a mountain. Sometimes they set entire oceans in motion. Now imagine this: magma, the molten rock beneath the ground, moves upwards with great force. When it reaches the surface, it is called lava. This lava contains incredible energy, even as it flows slowly. As you can see in the images you're watching, this kind of phenomenon has a destructive power. But at the same time, isn't it fascinating to watch the warmth and the dignified movement of that flow? Then there are the side effects of these eruptions. Think of the tsunamis caused by lava reaching the sea during the eruption, or by underground movements. These wave after wave of water masses are powerful enough to completely change the coastline. The waves reach not just one coast, but sometimes even another coast hundreds of kilometers away. Let's stop and think for a moment. As frightening as these events may seem, they are part of nature's regeneration process. When the lava cools and solidifies, it turns into fertile soil. The surrounding vegetation regenerates and life begins anew. You may have heard how fertile the soil around a volcano is. This is a gift of the eruption. Volcanoes are also a natural phenomenon that reminds us how small we are. That enormous energy, that majestic power, is much bigger than all our structures and technologies in human history. These eruptions show us the power of nature and the need to understand our place in it. But there is also a fascinating side. The landscapes shaped by the lava, stones, and ash from volcanoes take your breath away. Imagine the majestic shapes these lava forms as it slowly cools. Some of them look like works of art. Volcanoes are not limited to lava. Imagine dense clouds of ash rising into the sky at the moment of an eruption. These clouds affect not only the environment, but sometimes even the atmosphere, an effect powerful enough to change the Earth's weather. What about pyroclastic flows, which flow rapidly and sweep everything away? It's like a river, but a boiling river that destroys everything in its path. Sinkholes and caves are also the result of such natural processes. Movement beneath the ground sometimes creates such cavities on the surface. Such formations help us understand how much energy was once moving through the earth. So these landscapes you are watching right now are actually pages in the history of the earth. Volcanoes are not only a story of catastrophe, but also a story of rebirth, a story of motion. Understanding this movement under the ground means understanding the past and the future of our world. Maybe that's why we all need to treat these natural phenomena with a little more respect. Because no matter what, without them the world would not exist in its current form. The ash clouds that rise into the sky during volcanic eruptions are not just a natural phenomenon. They are part of the Earth's effort to reshape itself. These huge ash clouds can reach the upper layers of the atmosphere and be carried kilometers away by the winds. Inside the ash clouds is a mixture of minerals, elements, and gases from underground. This mixture is like nature's subtle process of reshaping life on the surface. But ash clouds are remarkable not only for their beauty, but also for their impact. By blocking the sun's rays, these particles can temporarily lower temperatures around the world. As you may have noticed while watching, ash clouds don't just rise upwards. They return to the Earth's surface and cover large areas like a blanket. After a while, this layer of ash settles on top of the soil, both covering it and making it fertile over time. But what is most impressive is the sense of silence these ash clouds bring. Aside from the chaos of the eruption, time seems to stand still as the ash slowly spreads around. Nature works like an artist, reshaping the landscape. The slow movement of the ash clouds in the images you are watching is perhaps like one of those moments when the earth breathes. Now let's go back to the story of the lava. Lava flows. Those hot, dense, and shimmering rivers that glide slowly down from the summit of a mountain. At first glance, it looks destructive, but at the same time, it's incredibly calm. As you watch, you will realize that as the lava flows, it gives new shapes to nature like a painter. These slow currents, no matter how hot and powerful they are, move in a certain order. Nothing lives where the lava passes, but this is only temporary. As it cools, the lava releases a wealth of minerals into the environment. This is why volcanic soils are so fertile. As the lava cools and solidifies, nature comes to life again. Plants, trees, and even new ecosystems appear where once there was nothing. This cycle of change after a volcanic eruption shows how patient the Earth is, but also how powerful its mechanisms are. These calm lava flows you are watching are part of the great cycle of nature. Every destruction sets the stage for a rebirth. The shapes formed by lava are sometimes preserved for millions of years. Imagine, some of the mountains, valleys, and islands we see today were once the work of lava rivers. In fact, when the lava flows of the past cool and harden, caves, tube passages, and interesting rock formations appear over time. These structures are like works of art patiently created by nature. Ash clouds and lava flows remind us of something. Nature always finds its own balance. As humans, we are only a part of this balance. Understanding how destructive or impressive these events are increases our respect for nature, because it is thanks to these cycles that the Earth has existed for billions of years. As you watch these landscapes of lava and ash clouds, remember that the Earth is in constant motion. Every eruption, every flow is a sign that the Earth is renewing itself. These landscapes are a reflection of both the destructive and creative power of nature. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.